Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about specifically what it means to have your sun in Scorpio or sun in the 8th house. So my name is Brandon. I do astrology videos here on YouTube. This is part of a much larger series that I've been working on, where I go through every single planet in every single sign and house. I have a playlist down below where I've gone through everything prior to Scorpio and the 8th house. So if you have anything in any signs or houses prior to that, there's going to be a video down in that playlist down there for you. But this is Scorpio week, so this is the videos that are all relative to Scorpio and 8th house planets. And I have been very excited to go through this series because, for those of you that don't know, I am actually a Scorpio sun. So this is my week. This is my season. I'm very excited to be going through this and finally reaching the sign that is my own, that I have a lot of empirical data and lived experience to be able to give to all of you. So I have so much I'm going to talk about with this. And yeah, I just really love the Scorpio archetype, and there's so much to talk about here. But anywho, all that aside, down in the description box below, you're going to see a couple timestamps where I'm going to talk about the different portions at different times. So I'm going to be talking about the sun in Scorpio, then the sun in the 8th house, because some people might have the sun in Scorpio, but might not have the sun in the 8th house. And there's just going to be kind of this overlap with these two as well. And I'm going to kind of go through little mini kind of versions of what the sun in the 8th house can be like with different signs in that specific house. And it's a really, really fun series. I'm really excited to get into this and to dive into it. I also going to be talking about the sun specifically in astrology prior to all of these as well. And then, yeah, I really love doing this. I'm really excited to start this Scorpio season here. And it's going to be a really, really fun series here. So if you have Scorpio sun, or you know someone with Scorpio sun or 8th house sun, feel free to send this video to them or watch this video. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your story. As a fellow Scorpio sun myself, I love talking about this placement, and I have a lot to say. So without further ado, let's go right into specifically what it means just in general with the sun in astrology. Okay, so if you've watched any of my sun in astrology videos or sun videos here, I kind of go over the exact same thing here, essentially saying that the sun is our light, right? The sun is our light. The sun is how we see the world, how we perceive the world. It's kind of how we really connect to ourselves and our identity. The sun sign is the sign that all of us are pretty much conditioned to understand, because the sun is the main body of light that we all kind of follow, right? We don't really necessarily think about all other planets in the sky when we're first getting into astrology. We typically get introduced to it through, this is your sun sign, your sun is this sign, your sun is this sign, right? And it's something that I always knew I was a Scorpio sun, but never knew that there was more to that until many, many years ago, when I had fallen into astrology and just dove into it, right? Now, the sun in astrology, based off of the placement and house and sign, all that stuff, and aspects, they're all going to kind of layer together the identity and how someone identifies themselves, as well as how someone views themselves, as well as like what you're able to more easily see, right? So if we think of the sun as like our main light, this is essentially like the main light that we are then projecting into other areas relative to that house, as well as relative to that sign. And so the sun has a lot to do with our identity. It has a lot to do with like authority figures as well. It has a lot to do with our own vitality, our own life force in a lot of ways, because without the sun, we would have no life, right? So the sun sign has a very prominent purpose within the chart, and having a sun sign specifically in Scorpio has a lot of purpose in that as well. Every sun sign has their own purpose, but a sun sign in Scorpio, and you'll see this as I go through all these Scorpio videos, they have a little bit more intensity to them because of the connection to Pluto, right? Now, the sun is this kind of regal light, this kind of just ability to see ourselves and kind of be able to be seen and allow ourselves to be seen, and then kind of the perspective and the perception of ourself from others is kind of something that we'll tend to see with the sun in general. And the sun is considered to be exalted in Aries, and it's considered to be at home in Leo. So in the signs opposite of both of those, it's going to be a little bit more uncomfortable. So it's going to be considered fallen in the sign of Libra, which is opposite the exaltation in Aries. And then it's considered to be in detriment in the sign of Aquarius. So I've gone through all of those besides obviously Aquarius, so feel free to check those out if you have any of those placements as well, just because the sun does function very differently in those specific signs, in a way that it doesn't really in the same as it does in Scorpio, as well as in the 8th house. So that's really what we have to kind of start with here is just really understand that wherever the sun sits, you're going to see a lot more of your own personality in that. You're going to see a lot more of your life force kind of centered around that. And a lot more of your attention is kind of brought to that. And you will naturally bring attention to the sign and house placement that the sun is in. Right? I'm not really going to be going into aspects into this, but aspects are also really important as well. To look into, and obviously you guys are interested in anything with me, all my links are down below, so you can feel free to check those out down there as well. So without further ado, let's go into the big, grand, mysterious sign of Scorpio to talk about what the sun means in the sign of Scorpio. Okay, so sun in Scorpio, as I said in the introduction here, I am a Scorpio sun myself, so I have quite a lot of lived experience with this, obviously. It is quite an intense sun. It is where the sun is, where everything's kind of dying, right? Scorpio season is really this time of year that is, I mean, it's right in, Halloween is right there, right smack dab in the beginning of it. And so there is a lot of kind of death, rebirth. This is really the season that everything really kind of begins to die, and really understanding that that's part of the process of continuing life is death. And that's where we see a lot of the significations of Scorpio in a lot of ways. There's a lot that could be said about this, right? And the thing about Scorpio placements is a lot of what they have to learn is specifically around empowerment, right? Around empowerment, around disempowerment. And when it comes to a Scorpio sun, this is a sun sign that doesn't typically want to be seen, right? It typically will shrink itself, or it will overinflate itself, right? So when we think about the sun being related to our ego, right, and it's considered to be at home in Leo, there's some really interesting comparisons between Leo and Scorpio, where a lot of my really good friends have been Leo suns. And the thing about the understanding about like the sun in its own sign in Leo, and then the sun in like a Plutonic Martian sign, is that when it comes to the sun in Scorpio, what they show of themselves is very strategic. Typically, it's very strategic, but it's also very kind of muted in a way, because the Scorpio sun is all about everything dark, everything hidden, everything deep in the trenches, the dirty stuff, the trauma. It's all of that. That's what the Scorpio 8th house archetype is all about. It's all that stuff that we don't want to look at. It is all the stuff that exists so that we can have life, right? So think about, you know, these beautiful, amazing flowers and amazing plants and things that we have, which is Taurus. And to get them to that place, we have to give them literal shit, which is fertilizer, right? There's all this dirt and this grime and this nasty stuff, or even sewer systems. Like, those all exist so that we can have running water and we can have those things that we need. And so the thing about that Scorpio energy is it's really dark, it's really deep, it's really nasty, right? It's something that we don't want to look at. And the sun there in Scorpio is like, you're gonna look at it. You're going to look at it, you're going to experience it, you're going to see it, and you're going to have to face it. And you're going to have to understand that you can shine light on those things, and you can bring those experiences to someone's psyche, right? So that's why Scorpio suns, or Scorpio placements in general, are one of the best, like, psychoanalytic people. Like, they're really big into psychology. They're really big into understanding the way people tick and why they work the way they do. There is this really powerful quality with the sun here in Scorpio, because it allows the person, whoever has that placement, to really connect very deeply to people in a very dark way. Like they see people's darkness, they see people's difficulty, they see people's trauma, and it's very hard to navigate that sometimes. But at the same time, you wouldn't be able to see that if you weren't healed enough to bring that to whoever you're bringing it to's awareness, right? The thing about Scorpio sun, and I want to talk about this, there's so much that like is going on that I want to say about the Scorpio sun relative to my own experience, and this video is going to probably be a little bit longer than my other videos, simply because of the fact that this is one of my major placements. But something that I've found that has been a consistent theme in my life as a Scorpio sun, mind you, my sun is even more heavily impacted by what else is in my chart. But the Scorpio archetype rules shadows. It rules those things we don't want to look at, right? And what has happened consistently in my life, there's been so many times that I can tell when someone is perceiving me as the projection of their trauma, or there's a lot of projection that I tend to experience as a Scorpio sun, but it's something I can really sense, where I can tell when they're beginning to fear me because I see them in a deeper way that they're not willing to look at, right? And this is not true for every single Scorpio sun. I'm not trying to say that, but for me, it's been an experience that I've had that is so scorpionic that it can't be avoided because it rules that shadow. And what literally has happened consistently throughout my life is because I'm so perceptive and I'm so aware of other people's energy to the point that it's the Scorpio stare, we have it, it's there, it's piercing, right? Those eyes. And because I'm able to see those things, people can sense that, whether on a conscious or unconscious level, depending upon the circumstances, and they will push that away. They will perceive the Scorpio sun person as a threat, which is interesting because Scorpio also rules Mars, which is all about conflict and all those things as well. So there's an interesting aspect there as well. But there's been so many times in my life, countless times in my life, that I have unintentionally triggered somebody because I've brought up something that I saw in them, that I was like, oh yeah, this is just common knowledge, right? And that's the thing about Scorpio placements is, like kind of what I was saying before, it's about disempowerment and empowerment. So what'll happen a lot of the times with Scorpio placements is they will create or perceive, in this example, because of the Scorpio sun, they'll perceive people being extremely disempowered by what they are exposing, what the Scorpio sun person is exposing to them, sharing with them, what they're sharing about themselves, right? That sun sign. So there can be this like very triggering aspect of Scorpio placements, but the Scorpio sun is meant to shine light on that, expose that, share that, and let people look at that stuff and understand that stuff and that darkness and trauma and difficulty and stuff is what's stopping them from reaching that next level, right? And the Scorpio sun also has a very it has this really interesting idea around perception and being perceived, because the sun is, like the sun is just naturally going to be perceived. It's the sun, right? It can't really be not perceived. Like the moon is a little bit different. The moon can be a little bit more hidden. Other planets can be a little bit more, reserved in certain ways. But the Scorpio sun, people see it. People can see it. And because of that, there is so much that Scorpio suns go through where they see things so much deeper. But then in the same vein, people will kind of push down or push down the Scorpio sun person to kind of control them or control how they're being perceived or how they're showing up or how they're expressing themselves. That's something that the Scorpio sun is really, really prominent in. It has this lesson around being able to be seen in a powerful way, in an empowered way. And what has to happen, and this is something I'm going to be talking about in almost all of these Scorpio videos, is the premise of disempowerment and empowerment. And the thing about Pluto and Scorpio placements is they are going to have to experience disempowerment or control or manipulation or abuse to, I don't like saying have to because I don't like using that exact language. But my point is they're more than likely to experience really intense things related to whatever planet's in Scorpio. And in the sun, it's literally, who am I? What am I expressing? What am I sharing? I'm sharing too much. I'm sharing too little, right? And it's because when they share too much, they trigger people. When they share how much they see, they trigger people. When they share too much, they feel like they're not being seen, right? And so there's this, like I said, there's this power disempowerment thing with being seen and being perceived and not, right? And it's something that's so interesting because my chart, for those of you that may know it, you may know it, you may not. It's very much a chart that is kind of forced to be perceived. And the thing about the Scorpio sun is it's one of those sun signs that really, it doesn't want to be perceived unless it's perceived in a very intense manner, because Scorpio is a very intense sign, and they want to be able to be seen in all their darkness and all their gunk and all their trauma, and they also want to be able to live in that and guide people through those things. So The Scorpio sun, man, it's a doozy, right? It's been a placement that for me has been the first key in unlocking a lot of my power and my story. And it's something that allows me to now see how, specifically with Sun Scorpio, a lot of the times what you'll see with this is you'll see a boss or a parental figure or a paternal figure or just anyone that you prescribe to be above you, right? Some sort of leader. And you'll see them do something really, really bad, like really illegal, really bad, really unethical, right? But then by seeing that, you then realize, hopefully, that you don't want to do that either, right? Scorpio placements, and this is more specifically with Mars and Scorpio, but Scorpio placements will be very much rewarded when they do the ethical thing despite knowing how unethical they can be because they've seen it in their environment, in how they've interacted with people, how people interacted with them, right? There's this kind of, there's a lot of power dynamics with this that Scorpio planets just deal with on a day-to-day basis. And the sun here it has a very intense relationship with authority, typically, where this is a really common placement for people that work in government, people that work in really powerful careers, because the sun does, to some degree, rule career in a lot of astrology practices. And it rules like how we want to be seen and how we want to be seen publicly and like those sorts of things. And so the Scorpio sun can have a very disempowering like experience, but they want to get to the top, right? And it's very interesting because Drake is a very well-known Scorpio, like very much known as a Scorpio. And he was the guy that wrote "This Started from the Bottom, Now We're Here." And whether or not that was actually true for his case or not is to be determined. But the Scorpio sun archetype is a lot about that. Like really taking that disempowerment, taking that bottom of the barrel, absolute lowest point of your life and really transforming that within your identity in a way that is beyond anything else. It's like owning that darkness, owning that trauma and turning it into gold, right? That's the thing about Scorpio. It's one of the most transformative signs because, but it transforms in such an extreme way because it will really kind of push through all of the trauma and the darkness and the death. And it is no stranger to death at all. At all. Literally, 2 days ago, myself was very close to that. Or felt very close to that. And the thing about Scorpio placements is they have to see the power in coming back from that and getting so close to the end of their life or the end of their goal and feeling so defeated that they're like, no, I will keep going. I will keep going. I will survive. I won't let this define me, right? And that's the thing about the Scorpio sun. It's such an identified thing that Scorpio suns can be. They can sit in that filth and they can live in that filth all damn day and all of their life if they want to, because it's familiar to them. Or they can take that and they can do the really heavy, hard work that Scorpio placements want to inevitably do, meaning like the archetype of Scorpio wants to do, and evolve that and turn that into something really, really potent and really, really powerful. And the thing about the Scorpio sun, I've said this in a lot of my private client sessions, so I'm just going to say it here as well, is if you have your sun in Scorpio, a lot about Sun Scorpio, and this is also true for Sun Pluto aspects as well, it's a lot about how you utilize your light, right? And the thing about light, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. It's very potent. It has a lot that it can do. If we even think about, for some reason, I'm getting the visual in my head of like when you take lights and put them at different areas based off of like a camera or like a camera lens, it kind of changes the vibe, right? It's very Scorpionic. It's funny because I see in my head that thing that people do with their flashlight at ghost parties where they put their flashlight here, right? And it like illuminates their face and it's like this whole scary thing, right? Which is so funny because it's very Scorpionic, right? It's a very interesting analogy with that. But point is what I'm getting at is the thing about light, and this is why it's important because we're talking about the sun here, right? And this is also similar to the moon. We'll get to the moon obviously in the next one, but the sun in Scorpio has this way of bending its light, right? Like I was saying earlier, they feel like they're sharing too much, they're sharing too little of themselves, they're oversharing, they're overexposing, right? And so that's the thing about the Scorpio sun archetype. It's about learning how to bend your light, bend what you're showing, that creates the most empowerment and allows you to use the resources of whomever you're talking to, the resources of whomever you're connecting to, or the resources of yourself as well, and be able to see how deep you can go, and how much you can shine light on, right? Sometimes for some problems, a flashlight would do just fine, right? For other problems, a laser pointer is what's needed, right? A really strong laser. Other problems need a lighthouse, need a consistent source of light, right? And it's a lot about, with the sun in Scorpio, understanding the value in all of those different ways that you can utilize your identity, your light, what you're sharing, what you're exposing, what you're bringing to light, literally, and seeing how all of those have their own value, and really exploring the range at which you can share of yourself. There's been times in my life where I have imploded, essentially, and it's a very sun Pluto, sun Scorpio thing, where I have quite literally taken my light, my beautiful light that I bring to spaces, and I have diminished it to the absolute smallest sustainable amount within myself, and I become almost like a black hole, right, in and of itself, and it becomes this very scary thing for both myself and for whomever else is around me. And so that's why with Scorpio, it's really about those extreme expressions of self, right? And with the sun here, they want to experience those extremes, right? And that's the thing, they're going to. And I think it's about understanding the power in all of those sorts of phases of their expression, how they're expressing themselves here versus here, right? There's these kind of just really powerful ways that they can show up, and they can be very powerful people. They can be really powerful leaders. Scorpio suns are really Scorpio suns, Leo suns, Aries suns to a degree, but mainly Scorpio and Leos and Capricorns all have a very strong like leadership presence to them, and that's just because like the sun in Scorpio knows in its way how to like really utilize its sun to share to shine light on what needs to be shined light or shown light on. Yeah, like it knows what to focus on within other people. It's very aware of other people's energy. The thing that I find interesting as well about Scorpio placements is they're naturally in tune with other people's energy, and they're naturally connected with other people's energy in a way that these make amazing healers, amazing psychologists, therapists, people that are inherently in tune with someone else's resources and their values and their money and stuff. And so the sun Scorpio typically also has a very powerful father figure, and there's some very intense karma within the father relationship, where either the father or just leadership in general, or whomever is like the main light, the main thing that you kind of look up to, right, in the world, whether it's your parent, whether it's your boss, whether it's your sibling, right, whatever it may be, there's this kind of like they kind of were not necessarily empowering of your light, or they weren't necessarily willing to understand how deep you could perceive and feel, or whatever it may be, and they kind of will put kind of a thumb on you in a lot of ways until you become a lot older and you realize the power in your perspective and your depth, right? And that's the thing, Scorpio placements have depth for days, but the thing about Scorpio and Pluto is it wants you to really, really dig really deep into the range at which you can see things, right? And that's why like death is such a natural part of life, right? And that's something that was really interesting. Before I was recording this video, I was watching a interview with a bunch of people that are first responders, and how they deal with seeing so much death and destruction and loss, right? And that's such a scorpionic job, is seeing that intensity and that intense sort of like just death, and understanding that there needs to be you need to be able to come to terms with the fact that that is just their time. That's how that energy works. And yes, you're going to see it, and you're going to see some really intense stuff if you happen to be in that specific line of work, but it's also something that that really is really important to understand the power in death and loss and disempowerment, right? There's so much power in disempowerment. The thing about Scorpio, it's so rich, but to get rich, it has to see how other people got dirty rich, right? Dirty money is very much like, this is more of a Venus Scorpio thing, but dirty money is very much like a Scorpionic thing. Dirty anything that you can see that's really dirty and nasty and grimy, but then you're like, oh no, that's not me. I'm not allowed. Or I'll do that, but I'll do it better, right? That's the thing too with Scorpio placements, is they tend to have this like, I'm gonna do it better, because there is that Martian quality to it as well, because it's ruled by Mars. So if you have your Scorpio sun, it's really important to look at your Mars placement to see how that is kind of adding to the story, because you could have a Scorpio sun with, you know, a Mars in Taurus, or a Mars in Libra or Cancer, and there's going to be a very different approach to how you're going through your specific self-reflective journey, how you feel about your identity, how you feel about who you are, right? There's so much in the Scorpio sun where it's about, like I said, seeing that full range of trauma, of darkness, of difficulty, of despair, of struggle, and seeing that there's something in that, right? There's something in that extreme range of things that has so much value and so much richness, and it's within you, it's within your light. And if you're willing to dive deep into that and go into those triggers and go into those dark areas and understand that I'm going to bring my light into that, I'm going to see what's going on, right? There's so much stuff that is unexplored that we don't even understand yet, and Scorpio rules kind of that deep dive, right? If you think about deep sea divers, if you think about coal mines, if you think about, you know, like anything that is like really, really deep that we don't understand the value of it, right? Our psyche, right? Even that there's so much within that. There's so much within that. If you think about all those things, there's so much like actual value in those places that we're untapped. But Scorpio suns are meant to be able to go through and see that firsthand and say, hey, let's look at this, right? Let's look at digging mines over here, or let's look at what's down this rabbit hole, right? Let's go and explore this really dark, difficult thing. Let's go through it together, right? Let's face this difficulty together, because I see it and I see the power in this, right? That's something I think is really, really great for Scorpio suns. It rules those really deep things, right? There's a reason that Scorpio and Taurus is very much the like gold mine, and like diamonds is very like Scorpionic and Taurus, that sort of archetype of like blood diamonds are a thing, right? And that's, once again, kind of, that's more of like a Venus Scorpio archetype. But blood diamonds are very much a thing where there's so much suffering and so much trauma and darkness and terrible things that are made to get to a sense of beauty, right? Even if we think about, and this is, I'm getting way off tangent here, but I love Scorpio placements, so this gonna be a long series, guys. We gonna really like it here. But point is when it comes to the things that we are, the things that we perceive that is valuable to us, all of those things, as much as you may or may not believe it, came from suffering, came from struggle, came from hours and hours and hours of work, right? Even if we don't see it now, right? Like, for example, the phone that we have in our hand, we take it for we take it for you know, we just kind of take it, we take advantage of it, or we don't really necessarily appreciate it, but we don't understand that there's so many hours that have gone into creating that. Even when it comes to light as well, that was someone's creation and idea, and it was something that they struggled, and they had so much darkness and difficulty. And there's a lot of stuff in our world that comes from really heavy, dark shit. And that's the thing with Scorpio suns. They're going to see it. They're going to understand it. They're going to be like, oh, that's a really shitty person. That's a really shitty way of doing that. And they can get really lost in that until they realize, okay, why am I being shown this dark thing? I'm being shown this dark thing because this is me. Am I being shown this dark thing because I'm meant to bring awareness to this, right? And so they're going to be the ones that are going to expose some stuff, right? I have been a whistleblower a couple of times in my own life, and it is, it's a very Scorpionic thing. Like, really saying, I'm not going to let you not look at this, right? And it's because I know that that's what's stopping the actual success, right? So that's its own thing in of itself. The thing, interestingly enough, I think I haven't brought this up, and I'm gonna probably try and end this at least Scorpio sun portion here in a moment. But I've just been yapping about my own sun sign, so go figure. Is the collective shadow that is connected to Scorpio. So when you think about the collective shadow, there's a lot of fear in that. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of darkness, right? Like I was saying earlier, in my own experience, I've had so many people that have viewed me as their shadow, as their darkness, as what they need to get rid of and they need to look away from and avoid and be scared of. When in actuality, it's literally the exact opposite of that if they were brave enough to do that, right? There's a sense of bravery that Scorpio suns inherently have. Because they are meant to walk through that darkness with a candle and keep on going and saying, I don't know why I'm here, but there's something in this. There's something that's powerful for me in this experience that I am not going to see yet, maybe, but I understand it. And it's difficult and it's traumatic, and I'm not trying to minimize that. I have been through my own trauma. Many Scorpio placements can definitely attest to the fact everyone has trauma. It's about how you manage it, how you go through it, how you turn into something else. That is truly, truly the most important part, how you react to it, right? And Scorpio suns are going to see a lot of reactions from them showing who they are or the range of who they can be, right? And I think that's the thing about Scorpio placements. And I need to take this to my own advice as well with this, but that with Scorpio placements, there's your range is ever expanding of what you can be, how you can see yourself. Like there's so many different ways, and it is, for me, I've experienced so many times in my life where there's been massive empowerment and massive disempowerment. And it kind of comes in cycles, where I feel so empowered and so confident, and then other times that I feel like I'm just absolutely the bottom of the barrel, right? And that's something that the Scorpio experience is kind of about. And it's about seeing and loving yourself at every range of that, right? And every moment of disempowerment, if you go into those triggers, you go into that darkness, that is your gift. And I learned that very early on, luckily, that your biggest gift is to run towards your triggers and to face them, because that's going to be what's really going to teach you who you really are and what you can really handle. And you're going to see so much of your inner child being healed. So much of your self will be healed as you're willing to walk through that darkness with yourself, whether alone, with a partner, with a loved one, with a therapist. There's a lot of power there. And I think the Scorpio sun has to manage that power. And I know this is cliche, but with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that's a really Plutonic phrase. It's also a Saturnian phrase as well, but more in a Plutonic sense, because it's like you see how much power can be used and how much identity and how much influence can be used for a negative purpose, because it was you saw it. You saw Scorpio suns, you saw shitty potential parenting, you saw really terrible managing, you saw really terrible people that people were worshiping them and following them, and you're like, why are you following that? That's wrong. That's not right. That's not ethical. That's not the right way to use that, right? And you're gonna see a lot of, and then when you expose that, there's a whole other level with Scorpio sun that they have to understand how to expose those things. And that's where Scorpio sun, like I said, the Mars placement's really important to see how you navigate those conflicts, because Scorpio sun also inherently kind of ties into other people's trauma and other people's karma really quickly, and kind of gets interwoven into their stuff pretty fast. And so it's about how you either, like I said, if it's a light and it's a laser pointer or like a laser and you have to just sever that, or it's a spotlight, or if it's a lighthouse, it's about how you deal with that trauma that you're dealing with, right? You you can just cut it off if you want to. You can have those extreme expressions of yourself. And think about Scorpio sun, if they feel unseen long enough, they will explode or they will implode. It's kind of these extremes. Like I said, there's this kind of extreme reaction to being seen and feeling like they're being seen, right? In my formative years, I did a lot of just time alone. Like I did so much time that I was just by myself, isolated. I just really needed that for my own identity and to feel like I knew who I was, because I was so sensitive. And I was so overwhelmed by a lot of different things and just feeling like I was dying in so many different ways. And I've been surrounded by death for so long in my life, and it's luckily it's not necessarily death of anyone super close to me. It's more of just having death kind of always lingering within my own life force, and that's something that Scorpio suns can definitely be kind of attuned to, is feeling like everything's life or death. And yeah, there's a lot of power in this as well. And I think with Scorpio suns, there is also, like I said earlier, with the kind of parental figure, there's typically like a life or death situation, or kind of an overpowering, overbearing kind of father figure or leader, right? Until the Scorpio sun may take that power back. It's about reclaiming that power of who they want to be and who they show up as. So the Scorpio sun is a very powerful placement, very powerful placement, and it's not to be really slighted or to be messed with. A lot of the time too, Scorpio suns, and I've experienced this, will be I don't say misidentified, but they will be misunderstood, but also in a way where people will underestimate what they see, like what a Scorpio can see. And a Scorpio can see a lot, and I think once the Scorpio sun gets very, very, very aware of how much they are seeing in other people, they're able to very quickly know how to navigate and, once again, edit their light and kind of contain their light in a way that they don't expose what they know, to maintain their kind of stance or their power or their control. Because Scorpio and control are a very interwoven kind of theme. So there is definitely a controlling of one's identity, a controlling of one's what one shares, what one shows. That is very Scorpionic. Once again, look at the Mars sign, very important for that. And look at the house placement as well, because not every Scorpio sun's going to have their sun in the 8th house, so it's very rare. But it is something that can happen. So if you have your sun in any other house placement, I definitely recommend you look into that. But the Scorpio suns, you guys have a lot. We have a lot that we have to share to the world, and it's not pretty. And because of that, it's going to be really rejected, and it's going to be really, for lack of a better word, shit on, right? People are not going to want to talk about it, look at it, look at us, all those things. And it's about us persevering in that, and keeping on exposing the darkness and the trauma, and understanding that that's what needs to be dealt with, and navigating those darkness with other people, with ourselves, most importantly, but also with other people, and understanding that we can only help other people heal as much as we've healed ourselves. And that's a very common theme you'll see throughout Scorpio placements, is the need to want to share who we are, but understand that that person can't see us to that fullest degree, because they haven't seen themselves to the degree that we see them, right? Meaning they haven't dealt with the trauma to the same level that we have. They're at a different evolutionary level. And it's a really, really powerful placement. So use your power very wisely, Scorpio sun. It's very important to understand the power of your identity, the power of what you're sharing, the power of who you are, which is so, so, so powerful and has so much to be seen. You deserve to be seen. In all of your darkness and your goodiness and your difficulty, right? And all your black, allow yourself to be seen in all that darkness, because that's when you know that someone really loves you, and you know that you really love yourself, is when you allow yourself to be seen and show yourself in all of that darkness and difficulty and trauma and nastiness, right? Scorpio sun really needs to be seen and allow others to see them, and then see others as well in a way that is just unfiltered, just completely raw, completely at my absolute worst, right? That's very much like, you see me at my worst, you see me at my best. That's very much the Scorpio sun kind of phrase as well. So that's it for Scorpio sun. I'm gonna keep talking if I don't get off this right now, but we're gonna do the Scorpio or the sun in the 8th house portion next. But yeah, the Scorpio suns, guys, like I said, I knew this was gonna be a longer video because I love y'all for obvious reasons. And I have a lot to bring, and I can obviously talk about this a lot more too. So if you guys have any other questions about Scorpio sun, I would love to hear your stories. And obviously, like I said, the most important thing I would really recommend for you is to look at your Mars placement as well, to see how you deal with conflict. As well as to see if Pluto's an aspect as well to any of this. There's a lot more with that too. If you're interested in anything with me, like reading wise, if you'd like for us to go into that, I'm more than welcome to. there's stuff down there for you if you want to book with that as well. So without further ado, before I keep on yapping about my own sun sign, let's go into what the sun means in the 8th house. Okay, so we have the sun in the 8th house. Now, this is going to be a little bit on a different angle than the sun in Scorpio. And the reasoning for that is because the 8th house is a segment in the sky that is right above the horizon line, right before the sun sets. So the sun is quite literally getting ready to set, ready to kind of die, right, essentially, or be unseen. And so the 8th house rules all things related to other people's money, other people's resources, other people's inheritances, death, transformation, darkness, all these different, like really difficult things, right? And surgeries and just a lot of really, really disempowering things is the 8th house, right? And when you have your sun here, there can be this kind of quality, similar to what I said earlier with the sun in Scorpio, of kind of like sharing light or exposing things that are really dark and hidden and mysterious and not really right. This is more on the... This is more of a placement that I see with people that are really deeply involved in psychology and therapy, both for themselves as well as for others. And then also with the sun in Scorpio, or the sun in the 8th house, you see a lot of people here that really work with a lot of people's other money with financing and working. Anyone with any Scorpio placement or 8th house placement can definitely be seen working with people's money and working with people's resources, because they really want to help manage that. And the sun in the 8th can definitely see other people's problems really well, other people's difficulties, other people's kind of darkness, and work with their resources, that whatever there is that they're bringing. They have a really interesting relationship with their in-laws as well, and specifically their like if they have like an uncle or like an aunt, but more so an uncle on their like father's side, there's typically some interesting stuff there, specifically because of the fact that the 8th house is like in-laws and the sun is like the father. So like something around that, or like just there's something about like the sun in the 8th that has some very interesting relationships within male figures. And this is also true for Mars in the 8th, but male figures in their family, and the resources that family will give them. So the 8th house is such a... it's such a shit on house, honestly. People don't like to talk about the 8th house because it's so dark and disgusting and gross and difficult, and it rules death. It rules literal death. And so it's not something that is easy to navigate. This is not an easy house or placement to navigate, because although the thing is with the sun here, it does naturally bring life to that. So the thing is, you could see people with the sun in the 8th house bringing life in areas that are deadly, that are you know, that are dark, right? Bringing hope, right? Working at a morgue, right? This is something that's a very 8th house, very 8th house thing, is like working at a morgue, or working with dressing up a dead person's body, right? Or working with those kind of final resting like cases, right? Anything that's forensic as well is very 8th house. Anything that is kind of putting those things together. This is what I'd see more forensics with, like Mercury in Scorpio or Mercury in the 8th house. But the sun here is like, you can almost bring life to death, right? And this is where like there's this really powerful like perspective and perception that the sun in the 8th has to give to other people, because they're able to really see, similar to the sun in Scorpio, see the darkness, see the difficulty, see the trauma, see the power in going through that. But the 8th house, it has this very like this very kind of like difficult bend to it that people don't understand, that it's part of life and it's really important. And so if you have your sun here, there's going to be like you're going to have a lot that you can see in other people, a lot that you can work with other people, a lot that you can build off of other people. There is definitely this more of a kind of like mutedness to how you show up and how you share. Obviously it depends on the sun sign, but there is a lot of investments that are done, a lot of money that's being handled. Loans are a big thing, grants are a big thing. Getting funding from other people, working in banks is really a big thing for Sun Scorpio, Sun in the 8th house. Yeah, there's just a lot. There's some very interesting stuff here with the sun in the 8th that has like it has a very I don't want to be seen type of energy, right? I don't want to be perceived. I don't want to be looked at. And there can be this kind of hiding of the inner child here too with the sun in the 8th. Obviously, this is different depending upon what sun sign it's in. And obviously it's important to look at what signs in the 8th house. But yeah, the sun in the 8th is going to have a lot of power to it, but it has to go through a lot of difficulty. And sometimes with the sun in the 8th, it's not going to really have that power until like a major, major, major loss, and a major death and a major, transformative thing that happens, right? It's true for Scorpio suns as well, but the sun in the 8th has a similar thing where it's almost like you could see them like waiting for an inheritance, right? Or waiting for like a financial windfall, right? Yeah, there's a lot there with that. Now, based off the sun sign that's in the 8th house, it's going to be played out a little bit differently. So sun in a Martian ruled sign, so sun in Aries or Scorpio in the 8th house is going to have obviously more of a fighter spirit to this. It's going to want to fight through the conflict, fight through the difficulty, really kind of really create a more empowering sense of self through going through really difficult shit. And the sun in the 8th is in a Martian sign, and both these signs are really strong here, because sun in Scorpio in the 8th and sun in Aries in the 8th both have pretty good like success here. The sun in Aries in the 8th, this is like definitely going to be obviously the trailblazer in a lot of ways and what it goes after. But in the same vein, it's also going to kind of really lead through, almost like bulldoze sometimes through a lot of difficult things that other people wouldn't, right? And so they could touch on things they don't want to because they're overly confident in that way as well. And so that's something that the sun in Aries in the 8th is really interesting for. So yeah, Virgo risings with an Aries sun is just, there's an interesting one there for sure. Because that sun in the 8th exalted, it like pushes you towards really difficult, dark crap. Maybe even dealing with people's sexuality as well as another 8th house significator. I didn't really talk about this with the Scorpio sun part, but sexuality is another thing, like another taboo topic, right? That's very 8th house. Something we don't talk about, we don't want to look at, we don't want to address, right? But that's literally what the 8th house in Scorpio is. The 5th house also has it as well a little bit, but that's more for like play and fun. The 8th house is like the real, like the intimacy, right? The real intimate stuff. And so sun in the 8th wants to have intimacy. They want to see how deep they can go with somebody and how deep someone else can go with them. That's something that you'll see a lot here. But anyway, so the sun in like a Martian sign, like I said, it's going to want to fight for a lot of stuff. It's going to want to go after a lot of stuff, and kind of pursue intimacy really quickly and pursue, connection. And they typically can get it pretty easily, both with the sun in Aries and sun in Scorpio in that 8th. They can kind of really perceive a lot of people's potentially weak points as well, so don't misuse that. That's the other thing with the 8th house in Scorpio. Don't misuse the weak points on others. Use those to empower others and don't use them to control others. There's a lot of control aspects of the 8th house too. Manipulation can be a thing because you've seen how it is done. You've seen the shadow of it, and other people as well. So sun in a Venus ruled sign, so you have sun in Taurus and Libra here. It's an interesting one because this kind of speaks to a lot more of the inheritance stuff I was talking about, more with the sun in Taurus, where they're like, I'm just going to wait for my inheritance. It's also interesting because this is like a double Venus ruled person, because this is going to be a Libra rising with a sun in Taurus. So there's a lot of like Venusian qualities in this particular example, where this is very much like leaning towards financial abundance through waiting for something really, like waiting for the shoe to fall, right? Waiting for get the life insurance policy, waiting to get like, anything that is, waiting to get like anything that's beautiful out of something that's really difficult. And this is something that's really interesting here, because this is where you'll see this can have a greed aspect to it as well, just because, but it's greed coming from other people's money. So there can be something really interesting here with this. Yeah, I'm not gonna really go too deep into that, but there is something there that kind of just feels like it can have a little bit of a greed aspect to it with that. Sun in Libra doesn't have that in the same way, because the sun does not like to be in Libra here, at all. So it kind of has more of a, this has more of a, like, I'm scared of being seen with my person. I'm scared of, this is a really great therapist energy too, the sun in Libra in the 8th. Sun in Libra in the 8th also has more of a like, I don't know how to navigate other people's stuff, and they're kind of forced to. So this is where you'll see someone be very much thrown into a marital discussion. This could also be someone that's really good at law, like being a lawyer for like divorces and things. They could see a lot of divorces. They could see a lot of relationship dynamics that they have to know how to like navigate and help people through. This could be someone who's really great at helping their partner through something. Like I said, this is a great therapist. 8th house placements definitely have that in general, but the sun in Libra in the 8th, this is where it's a bit harder because the sun is considered fallen here and then it's in the 8th. So there is this kind of like, I'm really trying to be seen, but I don't, like, it almost can struggle more than the sun in Scorpio in the 8th because it's trying to create harmony. And the sun in the 8th doesn't really have harmony. It doesn't really create harmony. It creates harmony after destruction. And that's the thing that Sun and Libra might have to come to terms with, right? Is that you can't have peace all the time, and there is conflict that's required, and there is an awareness of trauma, and like you need to understand where someone else's trauma is at to be able to meet them in the middle. That's something that you'll see with the Sun and Libra there, and there is definitely some interesting, like, more powerful partners here, or partners that might feel like they are very, their partners for a Sun Libra in the 8th might be very draining of them, both financially, physically, emotionally, sexually, all those things. That could definitely be a thing. And there's this kind of like extreme, like I need to be with someone in a way that is, I'm doing it for them, I'm doing it for them, doing it for them, and kind of losing who you are. If you have your Sun Libra, watch the video I did last week on that or last season, because it's really important to understand that process. I'm going to get off the Libra thing because I'll keep talking about it. Sun in a Mercury ruled sign, Sun in Gemini, as well as Sun in Virgo. This one is going to have obviously more of a mercurial way to it, so more of a mindset to it, more of a perspective to it. So these are the ones, once again, therapists are great for this. These are the talk ones, the ones that understand a lot more of the intellect of things. These are the ones that are also going to have really interesting relationships with their siblings, more specifically the Sun in Gemini and the Sun in Virgo. The Sun in a Mercury ruled sign is it has this kind of like, I'm trying to figure out the truth kind of thing. And so you'll see with the Sun in Gemini or Sun in Virgo in the 8th, where there's a, there's almost this kind of like, fight for the right information and fight for the right application of their information. So there's this kind of like, they don't have all the facts, right? And then when they're trying to connect with someone and intimately kind of understand someone, they get caught up in someone's words or caught up in how it's being perceived, or like there's a lot of those sorts of conversations that are happening with the Sun and Mercury. Sun in Virgo also has it similarly, but this is more of a surgeon. This is a lot more of a surgeon. When we put Virgo in the 8th house, it's very surgeon energy, very surgical. And the Sun here definitely has more of a, like I said, more of a mercurial quality, more of a talkative, information-based, wanting to figure out the depth of someone, analyze someone, very psychoanalytical in a lot of ways here. Yeah, the relationship with their opinion and their voice and how people heard them is very much a thing here, which I'll get more to that when we get to Mercury specifically in Scorpio. But yeah, and obviously I've done most of these videos prior to obviously Scorpio, so I've done all the you know, the Venus signs, all the Mercury signs, meaning like I've done Taurus and Libra, I've done Gemini and Virgo, I've done Leo and Cancer. So those are all videos you can check out as well for more context in this, because I'm not going to go into every single one because I would be here for forever if I did that. But anywho, moving on. Sun in Cancer and Sun in Leo. Sun in Cancer in the 8th, this is going to be like, once again, therapists. A lot of the stuff with 8th house is very therapeutic, very dark, but there's definitely some familial kind of family, ancestral kind of karmic stuff here. When we see the Sun in Cancer in the 8th, this is definitely going to be more of a psychic, intuitive, medium, healer, kind of coming from like a rich line of those types of things and those types of careers. There's a lot of family lineage stuff going on with this, I should say. And the Sun in Leo here, this is going to be really aware of a lot of trauma, a lot of difficulty, and these are the ones that are really going to kind of just, kind of like the Sun in Scorpio, but a little bit more powerfully. They're just going to know how to turn into something. They're going to understand it, right? They're going to just kind of shine all in their glory of their difficulty and their trauma. And I think with the Sun in Leo, I talk about this with the Sun Leo video, but they can almost overexpress the Sun because the Sun is so strong in Leo. And so there could be this kind of like, this actually, interestingly enough, can do the opposite problem of what you would expect, which is actually over-identification with one's trauma with the sun in Leo in the 8th, as well as the sun in Aries in the 8th, can almost over-identify and over-express their victim mentality, or their struggles. They can almost over-identify with that. And that's something that I think is really interesting when we put the sun in the 8th, because that is something that I've seen. Is there's people that have the sun in the 8th, and they are just always struggling, and they're always identified with struggling. And they don't see that they are surviving, they are thriving, they are living through that. They are preserving their light, right? As difficult as it may be with the sun in the 8th house. So that's just something I find interesting with the sun in Leo. Moving on from that, we have the sun in Jupiter's ruled signs, so Sag and Pisces. This is going to have a lot more meaning and purpose through what they go through. These are the ones that are going to be teaching a lot through what they did. The darkness, the difficulty. These are also, like I said, financial advisors in a lot of ways. They're going to have a lot of beliefs from what they go through. These are the ones that go through really intense stuff and then make TED Talks about them, right? Or go and travel the world to try and find the answers to what they're dealing with and the difficulty, right? These are also the ones that, in a similar vein, kind of with Sun and Aquarius, these are the ones that may like go through a significant loss of a loved one that may have battled cancer, or something a little bit more intense or niche or not as well known, and they want to preach it and teach it and advocate for it, right? That's like kind of a Sun Jupiter thing, is wanting to preach and prophesize and speak about something and share something. So that's kind of a Sun Jupiter thing in general. But in the 8th, it's like, okay, I lost this person, I lost this thing, I lost this opportunity, I lost this death, this disease, this difficulty, this mismanagement of finances, or structural thing in government, like, screwed me over in some sort of way, and now I'm advocating for it. I'm teaching about the importance of it because I had to live through it, right? That's why I think it's really interesting about the Sun and Jupiter ruled signs, is, like I said, they're always kind of looking for the meaning behind that stuff. It's really, really cool. Yeah, and I'm excited to do those videos as well. Sun and Saturn ruled signs, so Sun and Capricorn, Aquarius. This is going to be, like I said, with Sun and Aquarius in the 8th, kind of making an advocacy piece out of their struggle, all right? That's something that you could definitely see here. Sun and Capricorn making a business out of their struggle, making a name for themselves. This one's really intense. Sun Capricorn in the 8th definitely has a much more intensity than the other sun signs, but it takes a while to reach that, where there's a lot of control around how much they share, and they're very muted, because they might really want to do something really intense but doesn't have the right understanding of that. The thing about the 8th house is it's only going to show you what you're able to look at and what you're willing to look at. And once you look at one thing, it kind of is like an onion, and it's going to kind of keep evolving and evolving and evolving in its way. So just something to think about with the Sun in Capricorn and Aquarius. Sun Aquarius in the 8th, I already talked about it, but there's a lot of advocacy here. But this is more about creating like a community around stuff, around their difficulty, around their trauma, right? Or like really empowering communities. A lot of funding for communities as well. I didn't really talk much on the funding portion of this, and the financial part of the 8th house, because there is a lot there. But the Sun in Aquarius can definitely get a lot of, in the 8th, any 8th house placement in general, typically, can get some interesting funding, or secure funding or secure support from other people, if they're willing to say they need help. And that's something I think is really important with the 8th house planets, is to say that you need help and say that you are willing to ask for it, and that will be done for you. And the thing with Aquarius, it's like, I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for the people, right? So the Sun Aquarius in the 8th is almost like, I'm asking for this investment for the people, right? And that's something I think is really, really cool here. Sun in Capricorn has a similar vein to this, except this is a lot more heavier, because this is going to have more of a, I'm fearful of getting this money. Like, this is like similar. Okay, so like if we talk about like the Sun in Taurus and Sun in Capricorn kind of differences here. When I was saying earlier about the Sun in Taurus in the 8th, it has this weird energy about like, I just want to get the life insurance policy. I just want to get all that money from that inheritance. Sun in Capricorn in the 8th can almost have the fear of that, where they're fearful, and even Sun Aquarius too can have this as well, where they're fearful of getting funding. They're fearful of getting kind of this this never-ending, financial support. Like, they're really worried about how they're going to manage that trauma or that difficulty or that financial windfall or loss, right? How am I going to handle these things? And I think that's something that the Sun in Capricorn or in Aquarius both needs to come to terms with, is that they will stay stable, and they have that stability, and they have that, and time is on their side. As a Capricorn, Saturnian, Aquarian individual, like, time is going to be your biggest asset. And with anyone with the 8th house planets, it's like, the more you dive into them, the sooner, the better. And the more you face those fears and face that darkness and face that difficulty and face that disempowerment, whether it's other people's money and people's resources, finances, intimacy issues, right? The more you dive into that, the better you'll be. The more you'll see of yourself, the more you'll see that you can really be loved for all of who you are, the more you're willing to explore who you could be, right? If you're willing to face all those repressed parts of yourself, right? All those parts of yourself that maybe were unlovable, and also face that on other people as well. Do the same for other people. It's going to only help you. It's only going to serve your purpose as a Sun 8th house person, is going towards the shadow of someone else, going towards what they're not able to see because it's their shadow, right? They're not able to see what's cast behind them. But if you are the light shining that, you can see what you're casting. You can see what's behind them, right? They aren't as aware of it. Right? And that's a very difficult thing to show someone what's behind them that they don't want to look at, that they've shoved behind in their psyche. And that's obviously not an easy thing to navigate psychologically. Like, your brain is literally designed to protect you from those things. So when you have their Sun in the 8th, Sun in Scorpio, you're going to experience that kind of pushback from people where you're like, I don't want to look at that. You're like, okay, I'm gonna step off, right? And it's all about being understanding of people's kind of triggers and wounds, and knowing how to navigate those, and knowing how to share who you are and express that, and see that there's power in how much you're able to sit with those things. Because the more you sit with other people's darkness, the more you're willing to accept your own. And it's so powerful and it's so potent. And I think it's so important for Scorpio placements to remember that there's so much that they have been, so many souls they've been able to touch in such a deep way, that they don't even understand the empowerment that they've created across the board, by sitting with people in those darkest times that they've naturally had to just go through with people. Because that's what Scorpio Sun and 8th house Sun people have to understand, is that's part of their life journey, is just to look at that stuff and say, this is part of life. And that's okay, and I'll sit here with you, or I'll sit here with myself and watch it go through and watch it happen, and survive it and fight it and beat it, you know? And sometimes we don't beat it. Sometimes we don't. And it's not easy to accept that, right? But it's something that's necessary, right? And so just be aware of that as well. So, yeah, this has been quite a crazy video. On that regard, a couple things I want to say before I end this. If you guys are interested in this, obviously it's important to see if your Sun is also an aspect to anything else, because there's a lot of other stuff in there too that can be a part of this. I'm not going to go into aspects in this video or any of these videos here on this series, but if you're interested in looking at that, feel free to reach out to me. Obviously, look at the rulership of your Sun signs. If your Sun is in Martian sign, look to your Mars placement. Sun's in a Venus sign, look to your Venus placement, so on and so forth. That's going to help you a lot. Yeah, it's such an intense series to do with Scorpio, and I'm really excited to see what comes of this, and I'm really hoping that this helped some Scorpio placements understand the power of their resiliency. And it's something that is very, very important to bring awareness to with Scorpio Sun and 8th house planets, is that there is power in this. There is importance in this, and living through this, and understanding that you are going to live through this, right? And it's crazy I say this right now, and I want to put this context in here, but I think I said this earlier, but over the weekend, which is a couple of days ago, at the time of recording this, I had food poisoning, and I still kind of do. And it's not comfortable. It's not easy to sit through this and to go through this. And of course, when I'm recording Scorpio week, it's the week that I have to get food poisoning, right? And it's something that I want to let you know that it's not pretty. It's not easy. But if we continue shining, continue showing up, continue exposing, continue sharing who we are, and allow ourselves to be seen in all of our darkness and all of our difficulty and all of our trauma and all of our struggle, that's where the real empowerment comes. That's where people really connect to us and see, oh, this is a real human being. This isn't just a shadow. This isn't just a reflection of me. This isn't just a projection of my problems. This is a real person that has real problems, right? And so, yeah, this has just been a crazy video to record. I was dreading, but also excited to record this video for obviously different reasons. My physical vitality was definitely like during this, and we'll see how the rest of these videos go here, but it's also really exciting because I love the Scorpio sun. I love the 8th house planets, and I think it's so important to talk about them with a full awareness of empowerment, disempowerment, and I wouldn't be doing it justice if I didn't express the real thing that is happening to me as I'm recording this video here. That is extremely painful, but is also extremely empowering to understand that I survived it. I'm going to survive more, right? So anywho, that's enough about my Scorpio sun 8th house journey. If you guys like this video, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, all those things. You know YouTube, you know the thing, you know what I'm going to ask. And yeah, and I just really hope this video helped anybody that came across it. Seriously, like, it is so important to me that at least one person gets some assistance from my videos, my perspective. And I know it's long. I don't expect everyone to sit through all this. It's kind of a lot of stuff, but I just appreciate anyone that may have, or anyone that may have come here for a little bit, send this to somebody, whatever it may be, because I love what I do. I love being able to share this. I love being able to shed light, as a Scorpio sun would, on stuff people don't want to look at, people don't want to, you know, connect to, right? And I think it's so powerful. So I hope this empowered you. I hope this made you feel better. I hope this validated you, or anyone that comes across this video that you may send it to. I hope it does the same for them. So thank you so much for sitting through this. And yeah, and I'll see you guys in the next video where we talk about all the rest of the Scorpio placements. So we're going to do Moon in Scorpio and Moon in the 8th house next. So see you guys in the next video. Thanks again. All right, bye.